From the University of Alaska Anchorage, this is Seawolf Voices, a podcast about the pathways to and from education. I'm your host, Matt Jardin. This episode's guest is Geser BatErdene. For the globetrotting Geser, every new destination and experience is a new resource for him to use toward the benefit of his home country of Mongolia. During his time as an international student at UAA, he quickly assumed a leadership position with student government as a sophomore, eventually becoming president of the organization his senior year. Additionally, Geser founded the Mongolian Student Society, growing the group to be much more than a student club while hosting visiting ambassadors from Mongolia. After earning his Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance with a minor in French in spring 2019, Geser moved to Washington, D.C. to become a financial analyst. During his off hours, he co-founded 77 Nation, a podcast discussing Mongolian political issues that has grown to have an audience of more than 11,000 listeners. In this episode, Geser talks to me about the impact his podcast has had on his home country, his plans to implement governmental reform through his financial education, and his experiences as an international student. Geser, thank you so much for joining us today on Seawolf Voices.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, you actually became an alumnus not too long ago, spring 2019. So what have you been up to since then?
I moved to Washington, D.C. area. Yeah, technically it's Virginia, but D.C. area, and started working as a financial analyst because I majored in finance throughout the college years. And, the passion of mine has always also been in advocacy efforts, and especially on the idea of, raising awareness on specific topics or, things that are happening in the society. And me being from Mongolia, one of my goals after the graduation, and this is something that I also used to talk about at the university, is that I want to do something before I go back to my country, even if it's, in long distance. It has actually, I think the timing was, I didn't have a choice because with all the COVID, there's been a lot of restrictions in the travel, and obviously a lot of people are learning, I think at this point, getting much efficient at working online, completing tasks virtually. So one of those efforts led to me and some of my friends who share the passion to find a way to, communicate those ideas. And I think 2019, it was like a year of different podcasts coming to life. And one of those, we decided to, give it a try to start and, do something similar to, I would say, NPR or NPR politics or stuff like that for the Mongolian market. Obviously, we're not professionals. We're not journalists. We are just a bunch of people who want to do their part in the participatory democracy, that where citizens take active part in whatever is happening in the society. So the idea came to fruition later that year. And since the first episode, I think the audience was also ready for stuff like that. When we just started, we just talk about the general ideas and why is it necessary for people like us to, share ideas and, trying to deliver those ideas to the listeners. And the following year, which is last year, was parliamentary election in Mongolia. And we were exploring the possibilities of having perhaps some of the politicians or potential candidates who are interested in those seats to come as guests to our episodes. And I think with our goal of having as much representation as possible, we, unlike some of the other media organizations in Mongolia, we didn't focus on just some sides, didn't have only certain people from certain parties, but we did our best to have everyone's representation. So that I think helped us to gain some traction and, gain some audience. So that was something that, was very fulfilling in addition to our day jobs. So I think that was a very long answer to your question. What have you been up to since the graduation? But yeah, in a nutshell, it was something like that.
The podcast you co founded is called 77 Nation. Can you tell me a little bit more about the podcast and what your goals are for the show?
Yeah, sure. 77 Nation is a form of communication. We're trying to refrain from limiting it to only podcast, and it could definitely get into different areas in the future. So our goal was to be another form of communication, not only between us but with the audience, and making sure for that a young democracy such as Mongolia, that has only 30 years since it transitioned from the socialist country, and it's still learning how to increase and deliver the voices to the decision makers, and having such discussions, especially on topics of on such a taboo topic as politics, and having that in a manner that is not biased or not one-sided. The best you try, obviously there are going to be some biases, but we try to be as neutral as possible. And it's at this point it's doing just in the podcast format, but hopefully in the future it's going to grow into something larger.
To provide context for those of us who are unfamiliar, what is the political landscape like in Mongolia?
For so this is the frustration me and some of the co-founders, some of my friends have always had when it comes to talking about politics, right? There's some proverbs or different sayings in our culture that not everybody has to have a say in politics, or if you're young, you shouldn't have a say in anything. Let the grown-ups deal with the stuff. And it was just always associated with something very negative, with corruption, with different corrupted politicians. And we wanted to show the different side of that, especially for a country with small population like ours. Things can be changed, and can be changed not only easily but very rapidly if the voter is informed, and if the voter is aware of their rights and possibilities as a voter. So, Mongolia, I think I personally see a lot of potential in Mongolia, and how can it develop faster and better compared to a lot of other similar ex-socialist states, like former parts of USSR. Although Mongolia has never been a part of the USSR, but it was heavily influenced by the system, and having being sandwiched between Russian Federation and China, we'll always have them as our neighbors, and it's always good for us to maintain healthy relationships. But at the same time, having our own way of doing things. I think Mongolia has been fairly successful at it. It's just a matter of not only maintaining it, but developing it into something even better.
Do you know how 77 Nation is being received by audiences?
To be honest, it's been a bit more quiet lately. We've been the most active during the election. So, parliamentary election happened during summer last year. The next major event is the presidential election that's going to happen this summer. During our most active times, we had a lot of traction, and having high profile politicians spoke for itself, meaning they saw us worthy enough of their time to use as means to communicate with voters. So I think in that sense, we did a good first steps. Obviously, we have a long road ahead, but one of the things that distinguish us from others is I think we were one of the, first of its kinds. To be fair, we had some in the past, but, they stopped midway. But our goal is to continue the same work. And one of the things that also distinguishes us from others is that sometimes we host English episodes with professionals or researchers who do Mongolian studies and who are also interested in politics and international relations of Mongolia and its and Mongolia's relations with other countries.
Now, you've always been engaged in politics and advocacy. Back when you were in high school in Japan, you ran for student body vice president, which is not typically something non Japanese students try to do. And during your time at UAA, you became student government president and founder of the Mongolian Student Society. So, my question is there anything in particular that influenced you to go into politics and advocacy?
I would still be very careful saying, I'm only into politics. I majored in finance and I work in finance currently. So my passion, in addition to these, was like languages and international relations. And combination of those came into, politics it's not a one, how would I say it correctly? In my opinion, it's not something limited to, for me, it doesn't have a clear definition of what do you do when you are in politics. So, for example, dealing with people, leadership, trying to convince people of your way of doing things, trying to gain that trust, trying to deliver your thoughts and, persuade people to do stuff in your way. And that is a combination of many things. So perhaps my knowledge of different languages allowed me to understand people from different cultures. So it would make me, I would hope that it made me more open-minded and, understand people from different backgrounds. Sometimes I'd like to believe that helped me to have people who supported my ideas and some of the things that came into fruition while I was in college is something I'm very proud of, always.
Why did you decide on finance as a major?
I was never bad at math would be an easy answer to that, but this is something that people who know me heard a lot when I said I see my future in Mongolia, right? I appreciate the US a lot. I got my education, I have everything here and I see myself here. But at the same time, I always think of what I can be the most useful when I come back to Mongolia. So finance was one of the things that could help me establish that myself as a professional because if I graduated by in something else, for example in political science, it would not be something as valuable when I go back there. That's one of the reasons compared to many great professions out there, I decided to focus on finance, but I minored in French at UAA too, so I still followed my passions.
You mentioned a very interesting approach, which is trying to tackle governmental change through finance and not something like political science. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you decided to go that route?
Mongolia, like I said, has a lot of potential. And part of the reason that I'm saying that is because the population is very young. If I don't remember the exact statistics or numbers, but compared to a lot of other developed countries, people age younger than 30 make like 50, 60% of the population. I could be wrong again, but what I'm saying is the environment is changing rapidly. People are more educated. The market is more competitive. And to be competitive and valuable enough, you have to have skills in from different areas and obviously specializing in something more, but still have something to add. And if I wanted to just to majoring in finance and having the other sides of other things as part of my total experience makes me more competitive and makes me more valuable when it comes to everything. If even if I wanted to take active part in politics in the future.
How did you come to attend UAA?
Thank you for the question. This is something I always try to take advantage of because whenever I answer this question, I hope that somebody who was in my position before college hear it because I came to Alaska to UAA when I was turning 23. And it was a very frustrating time for me. Although I was working, I learned a lot at that job. It was frustrating not only for me but for my family that I'm not doing my higher ed. So I was exploring different opportunities, and a city in Mongolia that I was born and raised in was called Erdenet. And it turned out that Erdenet was a sister city of Fairbanks and the state of Alaska as a whole. So that agreement between the cities and states allowed residents of each side to have certain benefits. For me, it was an opportunity to get education in the U.S. with resident tuition, and the University of Alaska is known, at least as one of the very affordable education. Looking back, I wouldn't say that was the only reason, right? Just generally speaking, it was very exotic. Imagine Alaska. I've never, I only knew from some of the Disney cartoons or, some stereotypical things that you would hear about Alaska. It's the same thing, perhaps people in Alaska would hear about Mongolia. So it was a very exciting and exotic next challenge of my life.
When you came to UAA, you were an international student, but you were also very well traveled, having lived in Mongolia, Japan, and Russia. So, what was your experience like attending school in America and in Alaska, of all places?
I would say I couldn't be more lucky enough because I had great people immediately. Meaning I didn't have any family members, but I knew some of the we have a very small community of Mongolian students in Alaska. I think it's even less now, about 10, 15 people. But I knew some of them from my hometown, and they had the best hospitality when I first arrived and made my transition as easy as possible until I, as they say, stood on my own legs. So
How would you say that your time traveling and living abroad has influenced your views on politics and advocacy?
meeting different people, learning about different backgrounds, and learning about cultures made me realize that every person is unique and everybody has a great history, great story behind them. It's a matter of if you can listen to them. So I think that allowed me to I think that allowed me to stay excited about different things, stay excited about how societies as a unit learn to grow, learn on their mistakes, develop into something better, and constantly improve stuff by when it comes to politics by introducing new legislations, new laws. When it comes to international relations, making historical, events, making something that moves this, the humanity forward. I know it could sound, it may sound very exaggerated, but thinking of stuff like that, you realize that you can do a small part in it. You can play a small part in it if you want to. And I just took action on that. I didn't do anything significant. I was just making little steps at a time. When it comes to student government, I remember that it was my sophomore year. My English was worse than this, but I knew that I wanted to do that. I collected because it was not the election year, because it happened only once a year at UAA. For a vacant seat, I needed to collect a certain number of signatures, and I literally went around campus asking people if they would sign for me. I needed to collect, I think, about 80 signatures. And then I became a senator for the first time. And for a half a year that was left in that academic year, I didn't speak anything because I didn't know how can I be useful in that particular conversation. But I kept doing that until I started to understand stuff. And this is exactly, I think, this conversation made me realize why I always do that, because it's the exact same process when you learn a new language. For the first couple of months, you feel like you're learning nothing. You're not even picking up stuff. But there comes a day when all of a sudden you can not only understand, but you can make phrases and even put some simple sentences together. And that feeling is so exciting. And I think that helped me to learn new skills, even if it's not related to languages.
So, looking ahead, what's next for you?
My goal hasn't changed much since I graduated UAA. In the next 3 to 5 years, my plan is to pursue master's degree in hopefully in public administration, and after that, obviously continuing everything that I'm doing right now at the same time. But in the future, I'm still seeing myself in Mongolia, at least after the master's degree. Everything's I'm gonna apply the same approach that I did for everything else, one step at a time. So it's gonna be a step at a time like that until I get my master's degree in 3 to 5 years, and we'll see from there.
Geser, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Is there anything else you'd like to add or talk about?
I would just add that Alaska, UAA, as always, is still a big part, and I'm pretty sure it will be a big part of my life and me being a person that I'm today. So never underestimate the value that UAA can bring to you, the University of Alaska can bring to you. I was a heavy advocate for increasing international student population at the university, and sharing this opportunity at least for the Mongolian students. But at the same time, I was doing the same thing for others, because the same agreement that I talked about earlier, the state of Alaska has with 15 countries. And with there are multiple cities in some of them. For example, in Russia, there were a lot of cities in the East Coast. So the opportunity is not known enough to take advantage of, because it really gives it really you can really get the most out of this experience. And I have only nothing but the best memories that I have about Alaska.
Geser, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you very much again for having me.
Seawolf Voices is a production of the University of Alaska Anchorage Office of Advancement and Alumni Relations.